Hello YouTube, Goddard Radio Mosky here again with another beer review for you. This is a very special beer review. This is my 200th video that I'm filming for you here, so I want to give a massive thank you to all of my subscribers and everyone who's contributed to the channel over the last 8 months or so that I've been doing these videos. And I also want to dedicate this beer review in particular to two of my best friends actually, Daniel and Johanna Waldhoff from Bamberg, who I went to stay with a few weeks ago. You might have seen the 3 or 4 reviews that I filmed in their apartment and they got very excited about that, which was quite funny. But one of the great things about beer is you should always enjoy it with some of your best friends, and that's what we did that weekend. So I want to dedicate this beer review in particular to both Daniel and Johanna Waldhoff. So we're going to have a little look at one of my favourite breweries, and it was thanks to Daniel, in fact, that I was introduced to this brewery. So we're going to go again to the Schlenkerla brewery in Bamberg and take a look at Aecht Schlenkerla Eiche, which is their oak smoked Doppelbock. So I'm really excited to review this beer for you. Daniel went and picked this up for me from the brew house in December, just when this was available over the winter, so a massive thank you to him for doing that. And as is usual with my beer reviews, I'll take you through a brief history of the brewery and tell you a little bit about where the beer comes from. And as I always say, if you are simply just interested in the tasting of this beer, then feel free to go on towards the latter part of the video and you will catch that particular segment. So anyway, let's just get on with the history here. The Schlenkerla brewery is located in the historic town of Bamberg in Germany, and it's just to the northwest of Nuremberg. In fact, it's a really cool little town because it went largely untouched during the war, and the city has a lot of wineries and a lot of monasteries that you can go around and visit. It's a really, honestly, one of the most beautiful places in Germany. In fact, one of the most beautiful places in Europe, I would say. But the Brauhaus is right in the city centre, right in the centre of the old town, and it's very famous and well-known brewery all throughout Germany. But the brewhouse is located on Dominikanerstrasse in the city, and the brewhouse was neighboured by the Dominican monastery. And the history of the tavern actually started with the formation of this Dominican monastery in the 14th century. The first mention of the brewery actually dates back to the year 1405, but the brewhouse building was apparently sold a number of times between 1405 and 1615. And during the 30 Years' War, which was 1618 to 1648, the building was destroyed and then later rebuilt. But the brewery itself was founded in the year 1678, and before this year the reports are scarce, but there is far more documentation found after this year in 1678 for the brewery. Although since this year 1678 there have been numerous owners of the brewery. One of the very important owners was Johann Wolfgang Heller, whose name the brewery obviously bears to this day, the Brauerei Heller Bamberg. But he took over the brewery in the mid 18th century, and he owned an old rock cellar for beer storage up on the Kalberg Hill just outside of Bamberg. But the storage facility was later moved to the Stephansberg Hill, which is actually inside of the city limits today. And over the course of the 19th and 20th centuries, the brewery gradually moved to the location just above these ancient cellars of the Stephansberg Hill. In 1877, Andreas Grasser became the new owner of the brewery, and he actually had a slight physical handicap where his arms moved about in an odd way as he walked. And the old Franconian dialect for this was called Schlenkern, and after this, people soon began to refer to the beer as Schlenkerla, despite the official name of the brewery being Hellebräu. So this is where the Schlenkerla name comes from. A really cool fact, and actually to know about this one. But in 1907, Andreas' son Michael took over the running of the brewery. But by this time, more and more people were visiting the brewery, and they actually leased a part of the former monastery from the Bavarian government, who had become the owners during the course of the secularization. Of course, at the start, I think it was like 1803 that came in. But in the 1920s, the buildings in Dominikanerstrasse, the chapel of the Dominican monastery of course being one of them, these were restored by the Germanic Museum of Nuremberg in the 1920s. And in 1960, this restored part of the tavern was actually bought from the government by the company, and Michael Grasser's daughter Elizabeth and her husband Jakob Trum took over the running of the brewery. And in 1967, they passed the brewery on to their son German Trum. Now, over the years, they've modernised the brewing facilities and opened new rooms within the Brauhaus and added a beer garden and what was the former yard of the monastery. And I was there just a few weeks ago when I actually went to visit Daniel and Hannah. A really awesome place to go and sit and just enjoy a few of these Rauch beers. But in recent years, the facade of the Brauhaus has been modernised, and the famous historic ceiling painted on the monastery was actually restored as well. So that's your brief history of the Schlenkerla brewery for you there. Honestly, this is a really really awesome brewery, and Bamberg is really, it's the town in Germany for beer in my opinion. You've got 10 different breweries you can choose from, and this is probably the most famous one, in fact, along with Spezial, who I'll review for you at a later date. But this is a really, really awesome brewery, and I highly recommend that if you ever get the chance to go to Germany, Bamberg is a place you really need to visit. But just to list the other Schlenkerla beers for you, you have in the Rauch beer range, you have the Märzen, which is the brown trim. A lot of these ones have the different trims actually, I should mention that. They have the different trims with a kind of similar coloured label. But for the Märzen you've got a brown trim, for the Urbock you've got a red or a gold trim, kind of depending on where or when and where you actually get the bottle, and for the Weizen you have the green trim around the one there. This guy is the Christmas one, which is the Eiche Doppelbock. You have the lager beer, which is a Munich Helle style beer. I think that one's got a light blue label, and there's also a Fest beer as well, which is a very, very highly rated one, but I've never actually seen that. I would love to try that. But anyway, that's your brief history of the Schlenkerla brewery, if you like. So let's get on with the tasting of this guy. I'm really, really excited to try this one for you. I'll just bring up the camera and let you have a little look at the bottle here. It's got the typical Schlenkerla label on this one, and as you can see, Johann Heller is on the label here, which is really, really cool. You can see him with his little walking stick, which is pretty awesome there, and he's also on the bottle cap for this one, and I'm going to keep this bottle definitely. I've wanted to try this beer for so long, so I'm really excited to actually try it this time. And as you can see, it's a nice, really sort of golden and greeny colour, this one, and you can see the oak leaves just at the bottom here to show that they actually smoke this beer with the oak. I do have the commercial description for you as well, so I'll just read that out to you quickly before we get on with the tasting of the beer. This guy, I should mention, is an 8% smoked Doppelbock, as you probably would have guessed. The commercial description for this is what, while for the classic Aecht Schlenkerla Rauch beer, traditionally beech has been and still is used, the malt for the Schlenkerla oak smoke is kilned with oak wood. The resulting Schlenkerla oak smoke malt has a smoother and more multi-layered smoky note than the intensely aromatic beech smoke malt. Thus hence a complex smokiness in the Schlenkerla oak smoke is paired with a multifaceted bitterness of the finest Hallertau aroma hops. With 8% alcohol and amber colour, it matures for months in the deep brewery cellars underneath Bamberg into a special treat for smoked beer lovers. So a really, really cool little description of it there, but let's get this guy open and get on with the tasting here. This is a half-litre bottle, as you're probably guessing from seeing it here, but let's get this guy open and actually get on with the tasting here. Really, really excited and honoured, if you like, to try this beer review. So as you can see, a nice little bit of smoky opening there. Let's just get it into the glass and see how we get on here. It's a lot lighter than I expected actually. I thought it would be a kind of similar murky colour rather, just the same as the other ones are. Not so much of a head on this guy in fact, so it's actually just faded away, but it's a tan head. Usually it's supposed to be up to about a finger or so. Maybe I just didn't give it an aggressive pour enough to actually do that there, but you can smell the smoke off this guy as you open it up there. It really should have had a nice big fingered head, two-fingered head on it. Daniel told me that the ones that he had really had a nice big frothy head on it here, but an off-white head is what you should expect with this guy. I'm not sure exactly quite why it didn't do that. As you can see, it's a really nice sort of chestnutty, well, not even chestnutty, it's a sort of reddish chestnutty amber colour is probably a good way to describe it. It is perhaps slightly hazy. I'm sticking my fingers behind it there. I'm not sure how well you can see that through the camera. There is some visible carbonation going up to the top there, very, very small bubbles in fact, just coming up to the top of the glass there, but it smells absolutely wonderful. It's got that typical meaty smoke that you expect of the Schlenkerla beers. But yeah, a lot of nice, beautiful, meaty smokiness in there. Some underlying roasted caramel flavours, which is quite cool. Sorry, I'm just getting a Windows update. Can get lost just now. But yeah, a really, really beautiful smoky aroma here, which is as expected. And you've got really nice sweet caramel in here. And just there's a faint bready aroma kind of underneath that as well, which is really, really cool. Just hiding under the smoke. It's quite hard to pick it up, in fact. But you can smell how this is actually, you can smell the difference between this one and the Rauch beer. The Rauch beer has a really, I think this one's a little bit sweeter smelling than the other one. You can smell the sort of dried fruits in this guy. There's a little bit of figs and maybe raisins and plums in there perhaps. There's a little bit of nice dark fruit in there, but the bread is just hiding under the smoke there. And I think this one, the smokiness in this, it just kind of isn't quite as strong as the Rauch beer Märzen. But without further ado, let's give this guy a taste and see how we get on. I've wanted to try this beer for so long. Now that is what a Rauch beer should be. That is awesome. Really, I don't even know what to say about this guy. Really, just incredible beer, just even on the first taste. Absolutely beautiful. But yeah, you've got that nice smoky meatiness is the first thing that you'll notice about this beer. There is just a nice subtle kind of hint of roasted caramel in there, and the bready thing is something that you feel on the mouth. You can taste it. It's a very subtle taste, but you just feel that it's there. It's very, very well blended together, the flavour of this beer. That's what I'm getting out of this guy so far, and it really is just, it's such a nice beer. But yeah, a huge malty beer in this one, as you would expect from Schlenkerla. Hugely smoky, a nice, really kind of beefy, meaty character to this one. It reminds me a little bit of the kind of American beef jerky that we can buy in the shops here. But yeah, there's a nice caramel sweetness to it, an underlying bready malt to it that you just feel is there. There is a nice little vanilla and woody edge to this one that comes out kind of particularly in the aftertaste. Really, from what I remember of the Rauch beer, the meaty character kind of sits on the tongue a little bit more, but this guy has a nice little bit of the woody flavour sitting on the palate there, and it's really nicely done. In fact, the sort of smoky character, if you like, is sitting really in the back of the mouth, and it's almost that you can just kind of feel that flavour on your breath. It's really cool, but you're getting the nice more woody aromas towards the front of your mouth. It's really a really complex beer, this one. This one isn't a beer you want to session. This is one you want to sit and think about what you're tasting here and just enjoy. It's a tasting beer. But yeah, absolutely beautiful here. A really nice kind of vanilla and nutty flavour to the smoke of this one. I can see what they mean when they say this is different. The oak wood is obviously a good bit. I think it's more dense than beech wood, obviously, with it being it's a hardwood. So I can see what they mean when it gives this more kind of nutty aroma to it and things. It really is a beautiful beer. There's not much of the fruits coming out on this guy. It is that I was picking up some fruits in the aroma, but it's a very subtle thing. It's mainly a nice smoky and caramel bready malty beer, this one. You've got some nice, like I say, you've got some really nice kind of vanilla and woody notes in there, which is as you would expect with it being malt, with them using the oak wood for this beer. But yeah, the aftertaste towards the back of the tongue, it's definitely that sort of meaty, kind of smoky flavour that's sitting on the back. The caramel and breadiness is just sitting at the front there, along with these nice, really kind of woody and maybe even slightly vanilla flavours, I would say. A little, maybe even just not really, it's just a little very hint of nuts, very subtle, but it's a nice vanilla woody flavour that you're getting on this one. Very kind of smoky, I think, and it blends really well together. The mouthfeel of this one, it really is a full-bodied, very smooth beer. In fact, the carbonation is very soft. The alcohol warmth with this one, surprisingly, with it being 8%, I would have expected it to be quite a little bit stronger, but the alcohol warmth in this guy really is very subtle, in fact. But yeah, mouthfeel, definitely a full-bodied one, very smooth. Carbonation in this guy is almost just non-existent. It's a very smooth one, and it's just a nice little oily texture to this. It's a really This beer is just fantastic. Like, I mean, I'm not going to beat around the bush here. It really is a beautiful beer, and it's one that I sincerely recommend that you try for yourself. This brewery is fantastic, and I'm really glad that Daniel showed me this. This was, like I say, this was where I really got into craft beer, and this is one I've wanted to try from this brewery from a long time, and it certainly hasn't let me down in that regard. It's absolutely fantastic, really beautiful beer. But yeah, it's awesome. Like I say, a really kind of different take on the sort of traditional, if you like, Schlenkerla smoked beers. You know, this is if you ever get the chance to go to this brewery at Christmas, give this guy a try, buy a few bottles and share it with your friends. Beer is all about sharing it with your friends and enjoying it, and this guy is one that you really kind of should spread the word about. It's one of the best beers I've ever had, actually. So I feel really privileged that I have the chance to try it. It sounds like I'm sucking up to Schlenkerla here, but I'm honestly just so happy that I finally got to try this beer. And like I say, it's a really, really beautiful beer, different from the other Schlenkerla beers in many ways. So I hope you found this beer review informative, and you haven't found me kind of reminiscing a little bit too much of my time in Bamberg. So like I say, I hope you've enjoyed this beer review. Please let me know in the comment section your own thoughts on this beer if you do happen to have tried it. I really think you should check out Schlenkerla and indeed Bamberg for the beer. As I say, one of the best, probably the best beer city in Germany. In fact, it's just on the edge of the Franconia region of Germany. So go and check out Bamberg and indeed Franconia if you want some wonderful German beer. Thanks again for watching my beer reviews. As I said at the start of the video, thanks again to you for the 200 or so of you who have subscribed now, and thank you for your support over these 200 videos. And I will be back with more German beer reviews. Please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I'll be back soon with more German beer reviews. Cheers.